Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Interview Wednesdays. It is August 10th, 2022. We're glad to be back with you live and in person after a 5-week break. For those people on Zoom, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just enter your questions into the chat window. For those watching on Facebook, please just enter your questions into the comment field. We are monitoring that feed and we'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. Please note this event is being recorded. It's currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window will not appear in the recording. If you'd like to network with those people who are on the call today, you're welcome to put your contact information in the chat window. And I encourage everybody to save that chat and go out on LinkedIn and connect with everybody who's on the call today. Let them know that you were on the call with them today. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org, a website to help those who are unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In 2012, I started a second website, careerusa.org, to help those around the United States. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. It is available on Amazon, or if you see me in person, I've got it in person. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been around since the late 1990s. I took it over in 2007, and I'll tell you about our upcoming program that we have coming up this Friday at the end of this session. And since 2017, I've been a member of the Practice Interview, conducting interviews with the Dallas Pit Crew. And you get more information, you'll hear more information all about that in just a moment. Well, when we started this workshop back when COVID started, I asked Mark McDonald and Walt Glass to put together a little something about the workshop so they could, to put together a workshop about interviewing since Pit Crew couldn't meet in person. And the two of them came up with a great little workshop. We'll go into more details and we'll talk about that in just a second. So I'm going to let both of them introduce themselves. I'm going to introduce Walt first, because Mark will introduce what our segment's going to be today. Walt is not with us. He was hoping to join us by the end of the session. Walt runs an interview success workshop. So if you'd like to have a workshop where it's, one, he usually does it with two people. So if you'd like to be one of those two people, and he will work with you on not being afraid to answer those questions when you go to the Pit Crew. How do you answer? How do you become successful? How to talk about who you are, what you do, and how you can help. So his workshops are every Tuesday. If you want to scan that QR code, it will automatically come up with, it'll start putting a email together that looks something like this. Just fill in the blanks, let them know that you're interested. And, or if you'd like, you can reach out to Walt on his LinkedIn profile, Walt_Glass@yahoo.com. In the About section, it'll tell you all about his interview success workshop, and you're able to do that. So that's Walt. He will be with us towards the end of the presentation in case you have any questions. Mark, good afternoon, and thanks for being with us.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Boy, a few weeks off. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say now. Let me tell you about the Pit Crew. So the Pit Crew, the crew part of the Pit Crew is a group of volunteers. There's about 30 of us. It comes and it goes. Most of them are in job transition. All of them have been hiring managers. And so the crew started, I think, before my time. I started in 2013, but the crew started a few years before that as a group dedicated to helping you practice interviewing. And we try to give you a very realistic practice interview. We do panel interviews, 2 or 3 interviewers. We record them on video on Zoom, so you get a video afterwards so you can do your own assessment of how you answered the questions. They take about 45 minutes for the interview. The whole session takes about an hour and a half, and that includes the discussion afterwards. So there's a significant amount of feedback and debrief after these interviews are over to give you advice on how you might do better. So we're all about building your confidence that you can tell your story well. We believe that the best way to learn how to interview is to be immersed in it. So we make it as realistic as possible, and it's customized and personalized to your situation. So you pick out a job description, something that looks good to you. It doesn't even have to be anything that you're involved with. Our motto is practice early and practice often. So early in your job search, if you just started this week, you may not have any recruiters who have called you or applied for any jobs, but just find a job description that looks good and send that in. And you'll get a chance to convince a group of hiring managers that you're the right person for that job. And we'll be asking you questions based on that job description and based on your resume and based on where you are in the process. If it's a first round or second round interview, or if it's a fourth or fifth round interview, there'll be different questions and different approach to your interview. So that's what we call, immersing you in the situation. So practice early, practice often. You could practice as often as you feel it's necessary. I suggest it might take 4 or 5 times practice before you start to feel like you can handle most of the situations that you're going to encounter in your real interviews. But one candidate a few years back practiced 9 times over about a 15-month span for one job, multiple companies, but one specific job as a buyer in the aircraft manufacturing industry, and was eventually successful in landing that job. He kept coming back, and he kept coming back because he had some contacts inside his target companies who were encouraging him. And so the opportunity would open and then it would close and open and close, but he kept after it. So you can do the same with one opportunity or several opportunities. We're here to help you, be the best that you can be, so to speak. When you're ready, okay, one-way interview. So that's a two-way interview I just talked about. The Pit Crew also offers a one-way interview, which is where you interview with a video bot, an online bot. It's a very awkward situation. The Pit Crew offering of the one-way interview, Jeff has one and Walt has his version as well. The Pit Crew version is only 4 questions. I give you the questions in advance. And when you interact with the tool, you get 3 minutes to answer the question, and then you move on to the next question. So my goal is just to get you used to working with these tools, how you interact with them, how the time limit feels, and then when you see the recording, how you did in front of the recording when nobody's on the other end. And so short, to the point, and you can do that over and over and over as well if you're not happy with the result. So if you want to do a one-way interview or a two-way interview, the way you set that up is you send your information in to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. So for the two-way interview, I need your resume and your job description. For the one-way interview, I just need to know that you're interested in doing that, and I'll put your email in the system and that'll get it started. So when you're ready, just send your information to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com, one-way or two-way. One other service that I offer personally is coaching on how you answer the question, why did you leave your last job? So through my years of working with people in the Pit Crew, I've found that some people may have difficulty answering this question because their background gives them some pause. And so that's what I specialize in. And that's very personalized as well. So we'll spend some time together on the phone or on a Zoom session, understanding your situation, and then storyboard how to answer this question. Why did you leave your last job? Or why did you leave, why did you have 5 jobs between 2002 and 2006? Whatever your situation is, but also any follow-up questions that may be generated. So I try to take a pretty comprehensive view of how we answer this question and any follow-up questions that may be generated. And volunteers. So the Pit Crew, as I mentioned, is staffed by mostly people in transition, a few people like me who retired. And if you've been a hiring manager, you have all the prerequisites to be a volunteer for the Pit Crew and help others in job transition while you're in job transition. And you will get a lot out of it, helping others, make sure interviewing better as well. And so if that's something you're interested in, just reach out to me in the usual way, dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. Okay, so we try to have a practice session, a live practice session on Wednesday afternoon, so you guys can observe one. And if we don't have a candidate signed up like we don't today, then we might play a recording from a previous interview if somebody's given their permission in advance. So in this case, we have neither of those. So we're going to watch one of the 13 sessions that Walt and I came up with when COVID hit. And Jeff mentioned that he asked us to put together some information, and we did, and it turned out to be 20 hours worth of information, which we broke into 13 roughly 1.5 hour sessions. And today we're going to talk about analyzing the job description. And why I picked that one is recently, like in the last couple of weeks, I've had a couple of candidates come through the pit crew senior level positions. And so the feedback we gave them is they need to, do a better job of analyzing the job description and discovering what the themes are, because the interview is all about talking about how you can help them. And when you start off, all you have is the job description to determine where they need help. And so that's what analyzing the job description is about. And then the magic occurs when you answer the questions during the interview and you identify their themes and talk about addressing them before they even ask about it. Okay, so they'll begin to think you're reading their mind, or at the very least that you understand this topic so well that you're anticipating the things they're going to ask about. And that's exactly what you're doing, okay, by analyzing the job description. So that's today's topic. If you've got more than 10 years of experience, 10 years or more, then, perk up your ears. This will be very important for you.
If you have any questions, please just put them in the Zoom chat window. We will answer. Mark and Walt will be with us at the end of the presentations. About 45 minutes, I think I saw left on here. So we will, any questions you have, we'll get those answered at the very end.
And analyzing the job description, another great session from Walt and I about the final topic in the preparation series of the first 5 presentations. Now it won't go again. Let's try it one more. There we go. The first 5 sessions are all about preparing the interview. And so we're on session 5 of the preparation section. So there they are, recruiting, how to prepare, networking, star stories, video interviewing last week, and now analyzing the job description. And then next week, we start another series of 5, which is all about effective interviewing. So 5 to prepare, 5 for effectiveness, and then the last 3 are kind of additional special topics that build on all the information that came before, including how to handle difficult interviewers and their difficult questions and avoiding crashes. So that's what's coming up. All of these are available on the Career USA YouTube channel. That's where I go to take a look at them. I think they're also on Facebook, but I don't spend much time on Facebook. Jeff will tell you where to find them. So if there's a topic you see on this list that you'd like to focus on right now, you can go find those on the Career USA YouTube channel, and it'll be recent. It'll be in the last 3 months or 4 months. And so you can take a look at those. If you're curious about how to build rapport, you can go look at number 10 there. You can find it on the Career USA YouTube channel. All right. Okay, I'm going to kind of talk about the character of job description. So this is a pretty high level thing. Walt's going to get into actually analyzing them and how there are more details about how they're made. But I think it helps to understand just at a very high level the character of a job description, what's the environment that's generating them, and this will explain why sometimes there's a gazillion requirements. It explains sometimes why they're very vague. It explains sometimes why you get a job description and they tell you, well, don't pay attention to the job description, that's not really right. And you're going like, why would you give it to me if it's not right? But I'll cover that in my portion, and then Walt's going to go into a specific example of breaking down the job description and how to identify what is most important and how you should prepare for your interview. So this is still in the preparing the interview section. So typically, when you look at a job description, you're going to see 4 sections. And let's just focus on the first before the first slash, okay? Because it'll be a job summary, then responsibilities and duties, then qualifications that you're supposed to have for the job, and then perhaps a preferred qualification section. Now, each of these sections go by different names, but typically you'll see 4 sections. Like for instance, the second there, it might say overview. Okay, that's the same as the summary. It might say responsibilities. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Responsibilities and duties. Qualifications may be labeled technical skills, so on and so forth. You sometimes don't always have a preferred qualifications section. Now, the first thing to remember, and I heard Tony Bashir talk a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, about resumes, and he said something that was so insightful, I committed to memory, and it explains a lot. It says resumes are not read, they're scanned. Okay, so you got to prepare your resume as if somebody, which is true, is only going to spend 10 seconds looking at it. So it's really important to remember that a job description is a corporate governance document. Okay, what that means is it captures the structure of the organization and the job titles, the official job titles, and the job and the pay ladder is all, the job descriptions are all built around these corporate governance ideas of equal pay, opportunity for promotion, pay directly associated with contribution, so on and so forth. So, and because it's a corporate governance document, producing a new job description or changing an existing job description can be an arduous challenge. So there's a lot of resistance, or let's say workarounds, where they'll take the document and use it because it's officially approved and it's in the structure and they don't have to go through any review to change it. But in reality, it's not exactly what they're looking for. They have other requirements. Now, sometimes, so the first 3 parts of this, the summary, the responsibilities, and the qualifications, are part of that corporate governance part. Okay, so those 3 sections are used by HR to grade the position, or said another way, they have a position that's a senior level position, and so it needs to have certain items in the job description, and those are captured in the summary, the responsibilities, and the qualifications. Okay. The 4th section is likely the only part that the current hiring manager is able to modify because it has no effect on the pay scale or grade. So you'll see things like master's degree preferred, but the job title is whatever it is, project manager 2. So that means they're not going to give you any money for a master's degree. That's what that means. Okay, it's a preferred requirement, but likely the hiring manager has put that in there. Okay, it has no effect on the grade and salary structure of the job. And they may have other tools and particular things, but the thing to know is that if this is the case, it's a larger company, this is the only place the hiring manager gets to customize the job description, is in that preferred qualifications section. So it's not something to ignore. It might even be something to focus on. Let's keep going. Now, somebody asked about this, a very vague. This is a strategy, actually, and I learned about this early in my career. I was, when I first got promoted and to manage a group, we were hiring some people and they asked me to review the job description. So I'm sitting there with HR reviewing the job description. I'm going, this is really vague. We should add this and this and this because, that's what we're looking for. And they said, oh, nope, that's not what we want to do. We want to be very kind of vague. We want to cast as big a net as we can, and then after we catch a bunch of fish, we're going to sort them out afterwards. Okay, we don't want anybody turned away because there was some specific requirement they meet. They might be a great hire, so on and so forth. So this was their strategy, was just to collect up a whole bunch of people and then sort it out. Now, other companies don't want to do that. They don't want to spend the time doing that. They only want candidates to self-select, and so they'll put a lot of detail in there and, you know, expect mostly to hold you to it. Okay, you just don't know, but that's why you'll see some very vague job description. Now also, companies hire, some companies believe you can be trained to do just about anything, and so they're really hiring for personality and fit, who you are. Walt will talk about this, and so they may have very vague and limited job descriptions as well, because they're really looking for the right personality and the right type of person, and what you've done, achieved is not as important to them as your motivation or your interest in working for their company. So that's another reason why they may not be very specific, and you'll kind of less experienced roles are usually less specific than more experienced roles, because, you know, new hires, new college graduates, or people young in their career don't bring a lot of experience with them. And so if you put a whole bunch of things on there, you're not really looking for that type of person. You're looking for a more senior person. Now, job descriptions are often out of date, written some time ago. And so they're not kept up to date because their corporate governance document, and it's a pain to get them changed. And when I say it's a pain, you know, if you want to rewrite it, you got to get somebody from HR to do it. HR has to get it approved. It might have to go all the way up to the VP of HR. You know, they'll spend some time figuring out how it fits into the job structure and the pay grade scale. And so it might take months to get this done. It can happen. It can happen, and I'll give you some examples here in a little bit. But most of the time, it won't happen until they find somebody who they believe meets their requirements. And then if a modification is required, they'll put in the effort to do that. And I've got several examples to share with you about that coming up. But mostly they'll grab what they got and run with it. Okay, they don't want to spend any time and effort reviewing or changing it. Now, so here's how this happens. The job description kind of grows and grows and grows over time as the age of the job description gets older and older. So, you know what I just said, it may not be true, depends on the size of the company, really. They may allow the hiring manager with HR approval. You know, it may not be that tough to add a few items. And so the list, you know, they never take anything off. They just keep adding a few items at a time. And so I think a really detailed interview is a good indication that it was written some time ago and probably wasn't written by the current hiring manager and may not express the current priorities, meaning that the very first, you know, requirement may not be the most important. It's buried in there somewhere. It may even be at the bottom, okay, because the most recent hiring manager added it to the list right at the bottom. So that's some things you got to watch out for. And so it makes analysis of the job description very important. It's not just saying, okay, well, these are the top 3 things that they put on their list, and that's what I'm going to focus on, because they may not be the top 3. They may be buried deeper down in the job description. Few job descriptions have been written by the current hiring manager. So this goes along with their age, right? And that can be a good question to ask at the beginning of the interview. So we have a whole section on openings and closings, and another section on asking questions. So I'm not going to get into this really deep, but just let me say it in case you get a chance to use it, is, you know, right after you make your opening statement, you may ask this question, you know, Mr. Hiring Manager, Mrs. Hiring Manager, did you write this job description? And if they say no, it was written sometime before, then you have an opening to say, well, what is most important to you for this role you're about to fill? So that's a really potential way to introduce the topic of gaining more information about what that current hiring manager is looking for. Okay, some job descriptions some jobs do not have a job description yet, and you may receive a JD for the correct pay grade and position title, but little else that is actually relevant to the job. So somebody asked about this as well, and this is how it happens. And I was kind of surprised the first time this happened in the pit crew, but it happens. I wouldn't say real often, but it does happen. It's usually for more senior level positions. And so they'll give you a job description and they'll say, this isn't really the job description, but what it is it has the correct title and the correct level or pay grade. Okay, and it may not even have the correct title, but it might, if it's might be a senior accountant instead of a senior finance business analyst, and they're similar pay grade but different title. So you'll get a senior accountant when you're a senior business analyst, and they'll say, well, we're working on updating the job description. But that's how that happens. And so you're going to look at all these requirements for accounting and say, well, I'm a business analyst, and so I know something about accounting, but it's not what I really do. Well, that's what's going on. They're just trying to, if they're going through the process probably of getting that position approved, and so they have attached this job description to that approval as an example of how, what the person would cost and the span and scope of their responsibility. And so that's what's going on. So don't let that throw you off. And it can, certainly it's an unusual situation, but that's what's going on. But what do you do when there's no job description? What do you do when you're being hired for an undefined role where you get to define it, or perhaps it's in the head of the hiring manager and they, you got to get it out of them. Perhaps the recruiter knows, but perhaps they don't. So really, you will encounter some vague situations. And so to improve your ability to address what their needs are without them being written down, and to improve your confidence and to shorten your job search, you are going to have to do your own research. And here's what I suggest, okay, is that you find job descriptions that were for similar roles with competitors. And this is a good idea to do all the time, okay, is you're looking for certain things, you should look at job descriptions that are put out by the competitors of your target companies. You should just kind of look at the whole environment for what you're looking for in adjacent industries and your industries as well. But it's doubly important when you don't have a job description to know what people are asking for in similar situations, similar corporate situations. And that can inform you what they might be asking for as well. So having target companies really helps there, because you can focus on those target companies when you don't have an opportunity queued up and limited time to prepare. And so work on your prioritized list of target companies and go searching for job descriptions that are close to what you'd like to do in case pops up with a job, a job available that has no job description yet. You can still prepare and talk with confidence about what you're able to do and how you're able to help. In this case, it would be companies in similar situations, but you're using that as a straw man for their opportunity. Informational interviews would be really helpful here to ask people what their challenges are when you're interviewing them in an informational interview. And we have a whole session, I think it's session 11 on target companies and informational interviews. So if you want to go watch that one from, it would have been in April, it would have been in March. If you go look on the Career USA channel in the March 2021, you'll see that session 11. But that's how you can learn informally, I guess, through your contacts inside the company, what they might need and what's important to them. It's safe to ask the interviewer if the company outsources their positions. Good question, Michelle. Yeah, recruiter, you should ask the recruiter. It's kind of a question about who's going to be your employer, right? It could be a professional employment organization. You could be employed directly with the company you're hiring. So that's a good question to ask the recruiter. Okay, now this is the important part. You're going to do this research and you don't have a job description, or you got a very vague job description. So you're going to have to make a leap. You're going to have to analyze and predict, kind of how you would help them. And you're going to put that in your opening statement. These are the ways I can help you. And you're going to list 2 or 3 ways that you believe you can help. But then you have to start asking questions. And it really starts with not the interview, but the recruiter. And hopefully there is a recruiter. But if there's not, whoever you're engaging with, you start asking questions about what their most important requirements are. So this is to confirm that what you found in your research is still valid, okay? And you likely may turn up some new things that weren't obvious from your research, but you're never going to know unless you ask, okay? Good practice in any interview, but especially if you don't have a job description, you're going to find out by asking. Ask everyone you interview with. If you go, if you have more than one person, you can ask every one of them, what are the most important priorities for this position? And what are the most important priorities from your perspective? And, what was it in my background that you believe will make the most impact here? That's a good way to draw out what they see in your background that's important to them. Got to find out what they're buying so you can address how you can help them. Walt will get into that a little more detail. Okay, here you go. Session 6 covers openings and closings and asking questions in session 8 and session 11, informational interviews. So I covered a lot right there. We've got sessions on these topics coming up. Okay, I got a little poll now. How close of a match to the job description would you need before you would pursue an opportunity? So please fill in that poll. And let's see, can I put them up on the screen for you guys on Facebook? Here they are. Here's your choices. So the question in my mind is, how close a match would there need to be for you to reach out to the recruiter for that position, the recruiter at that company? And here's what you want to be able to do. You want to be able to call up the recruiter and say, I have what you're looking for. Now, given what I just said about the hiring manager probably didn't write the requirements, that the things at the bottom of the list might be the most important ones to the current hiring manager, that sometimes these things grow over time. I would say I would go for less than 60 to 70%. I would say somewhere around 50%. If you meet those requirements, you should give them a call and say, hey, I meet your requirements. And then you can have a discussion about the requirements that you meet. And then, right, you're talking to the recruiter inside the company. And now it may turn out that the priority is on other portions of the job description, or there's some items that aren't listed on the job description, but it's worth a conversation if you meet 50% or so, if you can get a hold of somebody. And after you have that conversation, then you can decide if you want to apply or not, okay? So it may turn out that the 50% that you have are the most important requirements. And you've just had a conversation with the recruiter and let them know that you have what they're looking for. And so now you're on the inside track. You're on the fast track. And that'll advance your candidacy much quicker than avoiding applying or avoiding making that call. Why do companies hire people? Okay, I'm going to start wrapping up now. I mentioned this before, and here's an example. Brian had a couple of years of HR experience. I think he worked in benefits, and he practiced with the practice interview team. And this job description wasn't even half a page. It was, like double spaced, 2/3 of a page. They wanted 1 year of HR experience in any area and a little bit about the company, and that was about it. Okay, so this is clearly a company who's looking for a relatively inexperienced person, but they're more focused on who that person is than what they have done. Just a little bit of experience in HR was good enough, but what's not on there is the kind of personality they're looking for, And you don't find that out until you interview. But that's kind of what that job description is telling you if you see something like that. This is Rudy Chakrabarty. She worked at Honeywell, big company. She was I don't know what her title was, product marketing, I think. Product marketing was her title. And she had a lot of experience with flow control. So it's industrial applications. This company was looking for a product marketing person for power systems, not at all related. But she had a lot of good experience. She interviewed very well. She had a nice portfolio of things she'd done. And she came from a much larger company. This was a smaller company, maybe 100 people. So after they met her, and she was encouraged by somebody on the inside to engage, even though she didn't have the major requirement, power systems background. But it turns out that was less important to them than the breadth and depth of her experience and the fact that she'd worked for a name brand company, Honeywell. So they changed the job description, took off the power system requirements, and used that job description to hire her. Now, can or will a company create a job for you? Yep, we got 3 examples, absolutely. The City of Dallas, USAA, and Broadcom. So in all 3 of these cases, the candidate engaged, this was Monet Schumann, engaged the City of Dallas and pitched to them a role that they didn't have. And they agreed that they wanted to do that. And then they went through the process of building, creating a job description and getting it approved. So City of Dallas and USAA, those were both high-level positions. So that took several months, okay? But they kept the candidate engaged, with the process, and ultimately it came to fruition and they were hired for brand new roles that didn't exist within organization prior to them, having an informational interview, having lunch, or arranging to, pitch their idea. Broadcom was a meeting, it was an accounts payable, I think. Yes, accounts payable. So not a real high level position. Oh, and by the way, the City of Dallas and USAA examples for you people who have 20 years of experience, here's how it can happen for you. You bring that kind of experience to a company, they may create a role for you. Now, the Broadcom example is a little lower level position, but it happened through a chance lunch meeting with a previous coworker who was now a manager in the organization. And after having lunch and catching up and realizing that the candidate had some things that Broadcom needed, did the work, got the job approved, and hired him. Took a couple of months, but that's the way it goes. It's possible.
Let's back up a little bit and take a look at how it really should be done if we're doing it. And some companies do this and it starts this way, but it doesn't end this way. So we get the right people together to say, okay, we need to create a job description. There's something new we need. Maybe there's companies expanding, or they need a different role slightly. They need more people in a particular role, so they only have one, but that person kind of gravitated into that role and has been doing that job. Now they need to hire more. So things like that can happen. So we get together and say, well, let's figure out what we need and how we're going to go about hiring somebody. So they really look at the activities and find out, what does this person really do? And how long do they spend doing it? I mean, what's the amount of time they spend doing these things? What's the primary duties and responsibilities that this role should come out of this little analysis? And also, what authority level, what decision-making capability are we going to put in this particular position? And then let's list our experience needed, our technical and soft skills, education. These usually come under the required, our candidate must have, those types of things. So what are those things that we just absolutely have to have? Sometimes this can be a long list, sometimes it can be a short list. Somebody asked a question about how can you tell if this might be an internal role written for somebody internally. If the essential qualifications contain things that are not necessarily normal for the average person, that might be an indicator that they have taken somebody's specific requirements they put it so tight that nobody else can fit this because they got to give this job to that person. So that can happen once in a while. But anyway, what are those retired things? And then what are the preferred qualifications? What would we like to have? Gee, we might like to have somebody with 5 years experience, but if they don't, maybe 4 years or 3 years will do. But that's kind of preferred. And then really the last thing they should do is determine the job title, which is fun. If you've ever been in a meeting where you determine a job title, you can understand that this might take longer than all the rest of it because job titles just go all over the map. I had the same job for a company for nearly 10 years and I had 4 job titles, same role. They just changed it. I suggested we have shirts with Velcro on it so that we could put a new job title up there and just paste it to our shirt like the military does on their uniforms. And we can say, all right, here's what my role is and what my job title would be. So that would, but what really happens, and they also got to go through a legal review and make sure they're in compliance with the ADA and EEO for the Disabilities Act and the Equal Employment Opportunity. So now what happens really is generally a corporate recruiter, if there is a corporate recruiting, if it's a company that has one, generally will drive this process. Hiring manager like to tell somebody we need somebody, and when HR says, well, what are you looking for? Then it's hard to get answers and information. So if they get something, then they'll try to build on top of that. They'll edit it more than they actually define it at times. And they may work with the hiring manager. We sometimes assume that the hiring manager is fully aware of everything in a job description, and that is just not true. Some of them don't know everything that's in a job description. Yes, they know what they're looking for generally, but necessarily the job description may not really emphasize the things that they're looking for. You know, there are companies that have more job descriptions than employees. So they build over time and you have all these roles and it keeps building and building and building. And the next thing you know, you got 5,000 employees and 5,500 job descriptions. And so generally agency recruiters are really not involved too much in this process. They usually prepare an intake document. So where they are looking for information from the company and say, okay, here's what I think you need and what, and so even though they have a job description, the saying goes from amongst the recruiters is from the research that I've seen on the internet anyway, if you can believe everything there, is that about 80% of what they write down on their intake document does not match the job description. That's a huge difference. Therefore, what's the lesson? You can't depend on a job description. You just can't look at that to say that describes the job completely and fully. I understand everything about it. You really can't trust it, but it is a starting point. At least I have something I can go with that. So I'm going to treat it as the starting point and see how I can go from there. If that's all I have and that's all I know, what can I do with that? You know, the job description is going to probably generate more questions than answers as to what's going on. So when you're looking at a job description, you're going to be finding out some more details and information about that, just like they look at our resume and they're going to be finding out more information and details about that from the resume. So yes, we got to play the little game of, at least initially, of checking your resume and keywords. All right. This is something that I don't want you to do too much. I don't want to get into resumes, but you can't spend your whole life redoing and having version 75 of your resume. Now you might have some different versions to tailor for sure, but once you get the job description, you can look at the keywords in the job description and see what the keywords are that match. JobScan is one of the tools that you might, I think it's jobscan.co or something like that. Thanks, Jeff, for the nod, and Mark. Where you can put yours in a very, like a text format in one window and then the job description other, and it'll come up with matching words. And I suggest you take, Mark was suggesting, take multiple job descriptions for the type of job you're looking for. And you can put 5 or 6 of them in that window and then come out and say, what's the most often used things? So you might find the top 5 skills and which ones of those are prevalent. So that might give you some ideas of how you might approach. But the idea is we want to match what they're buying, right, with what we are selling. So we start with that job description. So in my philosophy of what are they buying, it's 3 things. And so I've come up with this idea of saying, what is it that people buy? They want to buy who we are. What's your personality? What are your soft skills? What kind of characteristics do you have? How do you get along with teams? how to get along with people, how to get along with customers. That's why they ask us some questions about how about a difficult time with, and you can say a customer or a vendor or a manager. You can put in anybody you want. And so how do you deal with that? So how do we solve problems? How do we do that? So they want to know about who we are. They also need to know about what we do. A lot of screening is done on the what we do because they're looking at our experience and our background, our history. Do we meet the education requirements? Do we meet a lot of the things and activities that we'll be doing, things that we'll be responsible for? So a lot of screening covers that, but very little sometimes does that cover the personality who we are. And then lastly, it's how we can help them. And this is the thing that I see that is probably the most often omitted area in our interviews and our analyzing a job description to find out just exactly what is it we can do for them. This started out back in 2000 when I did my networking. I got into an interview. I got into the hiring manager, was Interstate Batteries, and we sat in a conference room and he said, well, Walter, what can you do for me? Which was just an I help question. You know, he didn't ask all about my background, my experience. What can you do for me? Well, I didn't have a clue, not a clue. So I walked out of there. I flunked. I got a G, not even an F. So it was so bad that I said, I got to fix this. And so that got me into this thing of doing the interview success workshop. And how do we sell these three things? So how do we find out based on what we know with a job description? So I took a job description, and this is the first part of one that I just selected. It's not everything in the job description. And I said, all right, let me look at this and let me see where the I ams, the I do's, and the I helps might be. So I looked at that one, and so I went through and just took all the soft skills and put them in red. Okay, so leading is one of them. Coaching and mentoring. And interestingly enough, coaching and mentoring is something you do, but it's also a skill. So it fits both of those categories. Communicate. Almost every job description has excellent communications. You are just great writers. You're great presenters. You're great, verbal communications. Well, our resume is going to show them our written skills, and our interviewing conversation, our interviewing is going to show them our verbal skills. So that's how they will test that. But everything generally has some type of communication requirement in it. Interestingly enough, the job descriptions that are very technical in nature, they're just all technical items on there. There's not a soft skill even listed on many of them. It's very interesting. They don't care who we are. They just want to know if we can do it. So sound judgment, critical thinking, leadership, sense of urgency. Those types of things I just went through and said, all right, let me find out what those are. Then I went through and said, what are the activities that I do? So these are the things that I do. So I went through and I colored those in this turquoise color and said, all right, what are the things you do? You do these kinds of activities. Then I went through and said, okay, and what's the result of these activities and my skills, my soft skills? And so I ensure this, ensuring that to meet project requirements, ensure successful deployment, things like that. So I just went through and analyzed all the I helps, all right? And when I get through, I've got a resume, a job description that looks like this. I said, okay, now that I've looked at the I am, I do, I help, I go back and let's go look at the I ams. And somebody said, how do you know which ones are the most important? Well, sometimes you can tell by the number of times that word is used in a job description. Leadership is often one that's used. Communication might be one that's used. Collaboration is often one that might show up a few times in a resume. How often is it really mentioned? Just like they look at keywords in ours, we can go back and look at theirs and get some idea. Now remember, you can't necessarily depend on it, but it is a starting point. So here they're looking for multitasking, all right? Lead multiple projects concurrently. So can you multitask? The coaching, guiding, mentoring, communication, the sound judgment, critical thinking. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to that later. Leadership and that sense of urgency. I've very, very few times seen sense of urgency listed in a job description, but I've seen it many, many times in corporations that says you have to have a sense of urgency about the task and of doing things. I remember in the last company, it did not say deadline oriented on the job description, but I won't tell you, that was very, very sacred in the company. We met all of our deadlines. They were absolutely critical to do that. Very, very high on the priority list. Here's all the things that you do. Here's the activities. And then doing those activities, here's all the things. So I kind of made separate lists and said, all right, now I can talk about with them the things that I can help them do. So they're selling me or showing me what they're buying by saying, can you do these things that yield these types of results? So I'm sure that if you know anything about project management, everybody does on budget, on schedule, and on time. So, I mean, within budget and schedule, budget, and quality, whatever. I can't remember the third one all of a sudden. But nonetheless, if you say that's what I do as a project manager, that I'm on budget and I'm on schedule, that all project managers do that. It's the results of the project management that are going to make the difference for us. So as we look at project management and we see these things here, these are the things that I can say back to them about my activities as a project manager that yields value to this particular role. So I'm going to do a little timeout here because I think this is very important. I'm seeing these three things show up on job descriptions, and I'm seeing also a lack of good communication skills to talk about in our interviews what these things are and how we use them. So diversity and inclusion, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence. So since they show up, I want to do a little sidetrack on that. Now, you might want to take some screenshots or come back and look at this later because I'm going to go over these pretty quickly. So diversity really is, do we represent the same diversity as the community in the corporation? HR is very, very much involved in diversity, filling out the reports, making sure that what we're doing and what we look like, how all that matches. So they report a lot of it and show a lot of that information. So they generally will have a statement at the bottom that talks about we don't discriminate with all these protected categories. Inclusion is very much a leadership involved activity because leadership was the one that says, do the people on the team feel like they belong? All right. I was talking to a manager and I was doing some consulting and I said, I've just talked to your team members and they say that you don't listen to them. And he said, well, I do listen to them. I absolutely listen to them. I said, then why do they say that you're not? Well, it comes down to his definition of listening was hearing what they said. And their definition of listening was you don't do anything different with the information that I give you. So there's a different perspective. And so do they feel like they belong? And how do you make them feel like they belong? Because you will do some of the things. You'll listen to their suggestions and ideas, and they will feel like they are an important part of the team because they are contributing. Critical thinking. The thing about critical thinking is I'm concerned that the interviewers don't know what it is either. I don't know how many people really understand that one, but really it's an unbiased process of trying to take facts and data and evidence to make a decision. So it's objectively. So here's the tough part. We all have biases. They're inside of us, and we have to figure out what they are and how do we remove those from making these decisions. So our personal feelings, opinions, and biases. So we have to recognize that in others as well as ourselves. Now, that's not an easy job, but that's what it's all about. If you want to talk about critical thinking, you can say, well, let me tell you what I think is important about critical thinking. And the skills that I have is I'm able to identify that situation, that problem. I'm able to complete and do the research, make some inferences on things that may not be all complete in data, but I can understand how to interpret that and make some inferences. I know how to look at biases and see different ways of seeing people's different perspectives, figuring out that what data is relevant and what's not relevant. And I always keep this idea of, I'm very curious about everything and I want to find out. And so I ask a lot of open-ended questions. So if I talk like that, saying this is how I apply critical thinking, you're going to be way ahead of anybody else. You probably will wow them because they don't know what it is either. And then lastly, emotional intelligence. That's really the ability to read others. Some people are looking at emotional intelligence as the one key to success in a role. Without it, it does have some merit to say, if you can't understand others' perspective, you can't understand where they're coming from, you can't understand that, you can't very well communicate with them effectively. So in any communication, it would be great if we understood their frame of reference. Whose frame of reference are you usually in? Are you patiently waiting for them to finish so that you can correct them and tell them what it is? Are you going to repeat what you said because they disagree with you? And since they disagree with you, they must not have understood. So you're going to tell them again. Is that the way you're going to approach it? Or are you going to approach it from an aspect of saying, maybe their idea is better than mine. Maybe their idea has merit. let me pause, let me think before I pass judgment. So something like that, I think would be great for you to talk about when you're trying to explain how you use and work with others to adjust your behavior so it's effective with them. So it'd be good to keep those in your STAR stories. Somewhere in there, you can talk about where you use inclusion, where you use critical thinking, where you use emotional intelligence. All right. Lastly is you take the job description. Here's another way I suggest you might take it and look at it by saying, all right, everything on the job description has one line per item. And I put that down on the left, all right? Then I say, now what experience do I have? What background do I have? Or is there some education involved? Or there certifications involved? What is it that I have that says I've done that kind of thing before? And what's the value that I can bring to that? So if I've done this kind of, I have this kind of soft skill, how is that soft skill related to a particular achievement that I've made? Then from my library of STAR stories, the situation, task, action, result, when they say, give me about a time when you promoted continuous improvement of service quality, productivity, and customer satisfaction. All right, well, then I can have a story that goes along with that particular item. You don't have to have a different story for every item, but you need to have a story for every item, all right? It's just like you have to have a reason you left every last company, even though they might not ask you each one, you still have to have a reason for leaving that. So if you kind of put it out in that fashion, you've done an analysis taking the job description, and a lot of that should come from your resume, your background, your history. You should have all that kind of prepared, ideally. Then when you get to the job description, you should be able to fill this in fairly easily. Now, it's a lot of work and a lot of time to do that. So I ask you this, should you practice today? Well, of course you should. Even if you don't want to, you should practice today. Even if you feel uncomfortable, you should practice today. Everyone who has practiced, and Mark can bear me out with this, that's come through the PIT crew or come through the interview success workshop, have all said, I'm glad I did. This was worthwhile. I've learned something. This has helped me. I remember Jared, he wanted to get into Lockheed. I don't know how many times he came to PIT crew, 6 or 7, came to the interview workshop, 9 or 5, he practiced and about 4 or 5 times with me. I know that even Jeff was on one of his panels when he interviewed Jared, and he got the job, and he announced it and said the real interview was very, very easy compared to all of these. Well, why do you think that was? It was because of all the practice that he had accomplished. So go through the practice. Come on down. We are on your side. We want to help you. Step out of your comfort zone and put your learning hat on and say, I'm just here to improve my skills and do a better job. And we are here to help you do the same thing.
All right, if anybody has any questions about what you've seen, Walt is with us, Mark is with us. You're welcome to unmute your mic. You're welcome to ask away. Let us know any questions you may have. Questions? Oh, come on now.
Hi, I have a question. Hi, so my question is, how do you handle an interview where the person who is interviewing you is someone who would be a direct report to you, and they tell you during the interview all of the horrible things going on that you don't want to work here? Because I really had that happen, where by the end of the interview, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to work for this company and I don't want to work with this person. It was really weird.
Mark, Walt?
I'll give you my first impression. Whenever I had an employee that complained about what was going on and this kind of thing, I said, sometimes we need to be thankful for the problems we have, because if we didn't have them, we wouldn't have a job. So you got to be thankful for some of the issues and things that you can help with and that you can improve. And so the second thought was, I'm blessed to have somebody that tells me the real story about what's going on. Now, of course, It may not be the company, it just may be the department, might be the area, it might be just that manager, or maybe the coworkers or whatever it is. So a few questions might be in order. And then the summary would be, says, I'm still interested in this company, and still like that. If I came aboard, would you be willing to help me to correct these things and to pay attention to them and to do something better with them? Because I would love to do that, all right? They're looking primarily, in my opinion, of course, everything's my opinion, is, are you the kind of person I want to work for, right? And do I think you can do the job? So they're kind of look at your character, personality, and that sort of thing. So here is a chance for an employee to choose a manager. That doesn't happen very often. And so now I can choose one. Are you the kind? So if there's a couple of ifs, if this is the job you want and this is the company you want, you don't want to let things stop you from getting a job. You want to keep pursuing that. You can always refuse the offer, okay? But keep going with the process. What do you think about those ideas? And Mark, Jeff, you might have some comments you want to add. I'm sure that I haven't exhausted everything we've talked about here.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And think of, if you're talking to the hiring manager, your goal is to convince them that things will be better with you. Okay, whatever those things are, you may not have a complete view, but things are going to get better when you're there to help. And so it's the same way with a subordinate, especially a subordinate who's kind of disgruntled, is when you're convincing them that if you come on board, things are going to be better because you bring skills and experience and abilities, that haven't been there before.
I think one set of comments doesn't
Change the story.
paint you. It's only if you hear it multiple times from multiple sources do you go, okay, this is not for me.
The solution to this particular individuals, maybe they're in the wrong job. They're just not in the right place. It's not a good match. They're having difficulties doing things or whatever it might be. And so the problem might be with whoever put them in this position, because as a leader, you are supposed to find people who can and will do the job. And so a lot of people can, but will they? So that may be, a solution. So you got a lot of different things open with what this might be. I would definitely ask the person, if I come on board, would you be willing to help me with these items? Would you be an ally? Would you be a partner? And what I'm trying to do is get them to say, I don't really want you coming to my office and complaining every day. Right? So would you be willing to be part of the solution? Can I rely on you? See what happens.
Okay.
Any other comments? Any other questions anybody has?
That was a nice question, Laurie.
Well, it really just turned me off while I was interviewing, and I interviewed with 4 different people, and each time somebody told me something about the vice president that I would be the executive communicator for. And they talked about how difficult he was to work with and how are you at working with difficult people. And, so it just seemed like they were trying to steer me away from even wanting to do the job.
There's a second question I would ask is, why are you staying?
Yeah. Oh,
What
well, that
keeps
would
you
be
here?
good, huh?
What keeps you here? Well,
Right.
Yeah, well, the fact that you heard it from 4 different people, I think says that right there sort of tells you something.
Right. And I didn't get the job and I was okay with it because I didn't really want to work there.
well, there you go.
I know. There you go. But I just thought it was really weird because it cast a tone on every subsequent interview following that by the time I was done, I was like, you know what? I hope they don't offer me this job because I'm not taking it.
Well, you can always research that person, find out what's going on, what's happening, what's their background, see if there's something in there to that.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we had a new person come in somewhere above us and changes went on that didn't make any sense? I remember I walked in one day and said, we're going to keep 30, fire 30, and transfer 30, all right, out of the unit. And they transferred my whole team. And so I said, how are we going to deliver this contract without the staff that we've signed? And it's, oh, okay, and I hired them back, you know. So people make decisions like that all the time. I said, all right, that's fine. We either got to cancel this contract or we got to deliver. Which one you want to do? Yep.
Question anybody else has? Question, comment? I think it's really, really important that when you see a job description, I think it's so easy nowadays for people just to click apply, 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 apply. You really need to look at that job description. Have you taken the keywords out of the job description? Do you have those keywords in your LinkedIn profile? Do you have those keywords in your resume? Take the time to, spend a little time looking at the job description. Do you meet 50 or 60%? Personally, I think it should be 60 or 70 or maybe even 80%. But, and I think, one of the things I think Mark said in his presentation was call that recruiter and let them know, hey, I'm the person for your job. I can meet that thing. They will go and look at your resume at that point if you go and say that.
I have what you need.
Yeah.
A lot of that decision depends on the target, if that's your target company and the job, kind of job you want, because here's the idea. When we do information interviewing, we don't know whether they're hiring necessarily or not. We can go look, but it doesn't matter because companies are always hiring. If they find somebody that is valuable to them, they will make a position, they'll hire you, okay? So that's what we go after. I'll say, let me get into that company, let me show them what I can do for them. And nope, doesn't fit the job description, but it fits something else and you can help us, you can do these things. So kind of go that direction with that mindset rather than saying, I'm going to limit myself to this piece of paper with this job description. If that doesn't fit, that's over. So kind of change.
Yeah, in the session on informational interviewing, I spend quite a bit of time talking about the hidden job market. And I think that I can justify the hidden job market being 3 times larger than the posted job market. And a lot of that is strategic plans where they plan to hire people later in the year, but that time in the year hasn't arrived. And if a candidate shows up who's really a good match, they can move those planned hires up earlier in the year. So I think that's a fairly defensible number, that there's a huge, hidden job market that is available to the right person.
Right. And we'll show you those 13 sessions we have again in just a second. You'll be able to, we'll go over them. So if you have any questions, you can go find those. Any other questions you got for Mark or Walt?
So I'd encourage you guys to do what Walt said. I mean, just as a activity, pick a job description, analyze it. See if you can identify the top 3, the most important things from your perspective. They may not be the first 3 on the list. Take a look. And if you've, if you're tightly focused on a certain role or a certain title, then you can also do what I suggested, is look at other job descriptions from other companies in similar situations, because then you'll arrive at any interview you have with sort of this background knowledge of what other companies that are related to your target companies are looking for in their hires by analyzing their job descriptions.
Lori, I see you raised your hand again. You have a question for
I
us?
did. Well, I'm really more of a comment on something that I do in the job interview, because I had a really bad experience one time. Well, I've had many, but really bad experience with a recruiter where she was doing the phone screen, and she said, "You've seen the job description?" And I said, "Yes." And every question she asked had nothing to do with the job description. And about halfway through, I stopped and asked her if she was looking at the same job description that I was. So I have made it a practice that when when I do my little intro and I'll kind of set the stage for them to tell me a little bit more about who they're looking for and what this position is, what they need, because it helps me focus on the areas that I need to talk about, because you can study the job description until you know it verbatim, but they may not even be looking for somebody that really does all of that. And it'll save you a lot of time and it will help you be more focused.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think, a lot of job descriptions, they were sitting on a shelf and HR pulls one out, puts it out on the post it out someplace. I think that's why it's very, very important after you do your introduction, when you're sitting down with somebody, can you tell me the most 3 or 4 most important things you need me to succeed in the next 6 months? And then you know what to focus on. And everybody you interview with, it could be a different 3 to 4 things. You never know that. So I think, that's a really good question to ask at the very beginning. Any other comments or suggestions or questions? All right, well, let me just share a couple more slides. We will get out of here. In Career DFW, Career USA, we're putting on training 4 days a week. We're back from vacation. We're glad to be back. I'm not happy with the warm weather, but I left 75-degree weather to come back here, so I don't know. But yeah, we're putting on training 4 days a week. Tomorrow, being the second Thursday of the month, we will talk about networking, networking 101. Networking is networking. It's basically how to, and these are just different people talking about how they do it, how do they approach it, and how you can think about it. So join us tomorrow at 1 o'clock. This Friday at the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group meeting, 9:30 in the morning Central Time. We'll have open forum. We'll talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, whatever questions you have about your job search. You're welcome to just pop open and, you can ask whatever you'd like. Next Tuesday, our LinkedIn presentation is with Terry Sullivan, a very interesting presentation. If you've never seen them, how to create a LinkedIn brand. It tells your key contacts who you are, what you do, and how you can help. The session will not be recorded, so if you do want to watch it, you need to watch it live. Mark, you want to talk about the 13 sessions? I know you talked about it in the presentation, but we'll let you do it again, or?
Yeah. So if you go to Career USA, the YouTube Career USA channel, you're going to find lots of things, everything that Jeff does. And one of the sections is the interviewing section. And the 13 sessions, which you can watch in any order, are broken up into 3 groups. So the first 5 are all about what you do before the interview. And we just talked today about number 5, analyzing the job description, but there's star stories and tips on video interviewing and preparing to interview when you don't have an opportunity at hand, and then preparing specifically for that opportunity. So that's the first 5. Then there's the 6 through 10 are all about effective interviewing, how to open and close the interview, how to follow up, how to discuss compensation, and why you left your last job. Building rapport by asking questions during the interview and also gaining additional information, and so on and so forth. Demonstrating enthusiasm. Those are all very good sessions to take a look at. Each one of these is about an hour and a half long. So, and then the last 3 are some special topics that'll shorten your job search, but not necessarily related to interviewing, like informational interviews, which is a good way to build rapport and, gain information about interviews. Specific focus on difficult interview questions and how you have an attitude of confidence when you go into an interview. And then the last one's my favorite. It's all the mistakes that you will make, even though you're not supposed to make them. You know exactly what they are, but you still do it. So we're going to talk about that list. It's a fairly significant list, and give you some additional strategies to avoid them.
Great. So yeah, all those are on the Career USA YouTube channel. And I'll show you that in just a second. Just to let you know, this session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page, and I will put it up on the Career USA YouTube channel if you want to go back and watch it. This is what it looks like, the Career USA YouTube channel. We've got over 390 videos up there right now. Click on playlist. Every video I put on there, I put into a different playlist. So there's resumes, interviewing, LinkedIn, networking, they're all there. But if you click on interviewing, don't click on the video, but down below where you see that green arrow, click on view full playlist, and then up will come a list of all the different dates and topics, and you just scroll down to find whichever topic it is you want. It is in date order from the most recent on the very, very top. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops and you'd like to join the Career USA mailing list, you're welcome to do so. Just send an email to Career USA, +subscribe@groups.io. When you do that, you'll never be spammed, but what you will get is the topic of the day, the title of the day, and most importantly, the Zoom link of the day. That way you can grab your lunch and join us for our presentations every day. Please remember, Career FW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no full or part-time employees. Mark and Walt are both volunteers. I'm a volunteer. I've never gotten paid to do any of this I've done over the last 13, 14 years. We're just here to help you land your next great opportunity. So thank you very much for joining us today. Have a great rest of Wednesday, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow for Networking Thursday.
Laura, if you're still